So caught up in myself.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. This is News and Views on Salam Media. My name is Julie Ali, and I am in the company of Shaykh Jahangir Mahmud. He's in our country to attend, well, rather, he attended the AMS conference, which was held in Durban. He has been in the education field for almost 30 years. He's also very passionate about women's issues. But for this part of the interview, we're going to be talking education, the impact on us as global Muslims, the impact on us here in South Africa, and the future of education. So all of that and more will be unpacked in the following half an hour with Sheikh Jahangir Mahmouda. Please do stay with us. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Lovely to
Walaikum
have you.
assalam. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I see 30 years is a long, long time. How did you find yourself in the space of education, and why your passion for education?
Well, basically because I'm the son and grandson of teachers. So this was probably the natural route I was going to take. But more importantly, as a young man, and I wanted to be an activist. And when you are young and you are full of this Islamic enthusiasm, so I also shopped around at different movements and organizations and the Jamaats where people were working in their own way for the sake of Islam, helping out their brothers and sisters. But I felt that there was one weak area: education. So we have, obviously, Islam encompasses all of our lives and all of our aspects of our lives. But I felt that the education part was suffering a lot. It hadn't seen good days for a very long time, especially since the world became colonized by the European powers. And Muslim education was put on a back burner. And that is why I did this would be my way.
Alhamdulillah. Here in South Africa, the Muslim schools seem to be gaining momentum, and us as Muslim parents want our children to have the best of both worlds: Islamic grounding, proper Islamic grounding, and of course, secular education, so that we can be competitive in the global space, so to speak. How do you see that playing out, not only in Pakistan, but globally? And what's the scenario looking like to you of South Africa and the Muslim schools here?
Well, starting with the global problem, most of the problems that Islamic schools face are common in all countries. I'm also the founder member of the Global Association of Islamic Schools, and we also had a conference about a week ago in Durban. And I see certain problems regarding curriculum. Let's starting with curriculum. We don't have our own actually. So we usually take it from the secular or conventional curriculum of that country, and they sort of patch it up with a bit of Islam here and their own Islamic curricula. There can't really be a standard that can go global, but there ought to be at least a standard which is minimum everywhere. So each school has their own policies about that. But the real thing is integrating the integration of Islamic values with whatever we are teaching. It could be physics or mathematics or geography from the Islamic perspective itself. And that we have a problem lacking in building our own curriculum worldwide. The second thing which I feel is, and I have the teachers, a lot of teachers, they need, in fact, all teachers, no matter where they teach, which country or religion or faith, they all need a good training. They need support. And Islamic schools more so. And that is still something which we are working very hard to provide. And there are educators around the world. Like I mentioned, the Global Association of Islamic Schools is trying to put best practices together, bring together educators from around the world to help each other and help each other train each other, share their skills. The third thing which and this is the most serious problem, and I'm going to, I've learned a new word in the last 20 days, and I keep saying, suicide by audience. And I mean, I'm going to say something so very true, it's not going to be very, make people happy. I think the leadership, for example, in a school, it could be the principal. I believe the leadership should be supported by the community, supported by the board of that school or institute, uh, not controlled by the board. And I see around the world, not just in this country or my own country, they're all my countries. Wherever Muslim brothers and sisters live, it's our country. So I feel that the leadership should be supported and given more of a free hand. Now, we had very few principals in the global conference. Why was that? Because the principals couldn't be supported financially to go perhaps to the conference. And you see a lot of disgruntlement from Japan to California in this area. So I think that the Muslim communities in Northern South Africa, it should come together even more and further develop these bonds and treat each other as brothers and sisters as we are by the Quran, instead of having this petty politics stuff everywhere. And that's a global problem.
Okay, when we talk about developing the curriculum for the Islamic schools, not only in South Africa, but internationally, globally, I have come across amazingly well-run schools in South Africa with the most amazing results. And these are our private schools. And it seems as if what's missing, perhaps in our schools or state-run schools, is the critical thinking aspect. And that's something simple. If we introduce it, if we understand what it's about, we make our children critical thinkers, and we'll have the most amazing leadership going forward. Why has that not been implemented up to now?
You've really touched a nerve there. So I'm going to add before I answer the question. I think three things are such basic and unique human endowments that every person should be trained in them, should have them as much as they can. And the more you have of these three things I'm going to mention, the more human they make you. Critical thinking, empathy, and self-awareness. So I do work with the Muslim leadership and teachers on these three areas, but the thing is, it's for everybody. Regarding the South African context, I've seen wonderful schools, and I've seen exemplary schools. I went to a school, I've been working with South African schools for 7 years now, and since I first came to visit. And I'll tell you a beautiful thing happened. I saw it. I was in a school with the principal, and he was showing me around the building. And in that process, we crossed by a group of children, little children, who saw him, and they left their games and they rushed to hug him, saying, Salam, 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 Salam. And it was so cute, little kids. And after they're gone, I asked the principal, do you teach these children? Because they're very young and you're a very senior person. He said, no. But you see, that's the image he has built. And the kids have rushed towards him like he's their grandfather or an uncle or a dear uncle. So this is something that you don't see everywhere. In South Africa, this is something I've seen more often than not. However, we don't stop improving, right? However, we still have the same curriculum problem. It's still a lot of patchwork that we're doing. We need to build the curriculum for our schools the ground up. So we have people making wonderful books. I've seen some wonderful books coming out of South Africa, other countries. I've written a few books myself. I had an institute which also writes curriculum for institutes. But nevertheless, I think there's a lot more work to go in this area. And here I will also ask, I see people in South Africa are very generous. I go back home and I go back to other countries, I give the example of South Africa. These people are so generous in Lillah, in spending on the community. And because you're so generous, I'm going to ask these people to be more generous and spend in long-term projects. Like the curriculum is a very long-term project. Like building human resources, capacity development of the principals, the teachers. This is a long-term process. So when you spend so much money and so generously on buildings, on the cars, on the furniture and everything else, this is far, far more important. And I call upon the generosity, which is already there, to divert a bit of the funds towards this.
Inshallah. The other issue here in South Africa, I'm not sure if it's a global problem either, and I see we do have an early development a childhood development teacher in the room as well. That's my colleague Miriam Mia. She's very passionate about it. She's passionate about education and women's rights as well, as am I. Is the issue around school governing bodies, parents' involvement or parents' interference? How important is that?
I think it's very important for the parents to be involved on the same team. So usually in parents, it becomes something like parents versus teachers. So I also asked them when I used to go to my children's parent-teacher meetings, and it took me years to convince the teacher that I was being honest and I had good intentions. The first thing I would say to my son or daughter's teacher, and I would say, "Ma'am or sir, we are on the same team. I'm a parent, you're the teacher. We both are on the same team. We both want the same thing. So let's not be defensive or offensive." And myself, being a teacher myself, I understand where you're coming from. I understand the problems you probably have: overworked, you're underpaid, and so on. So, but the parents have to understand the teacher is not somebody, he's not their employee, he's not their servant, right? He's somebody who's their partner in building a future for their own child. The teacher is going to be gone next year or year after at best. That's all is going to give time to your child. It is you and your child who's going to benefit the most. So treat your teacher as a partner in this.
And work together rather
Work
than
together
butting
against
heads.
each other.
The other issue, as well as in this day and age, the huge challenge I think a lot of young parents are faced with is possibly the absent parent, either the absent mother or the absent father, due to, I think, work commitments or whatever. How do we try and fill that gap? Because a child that suffers that syndrome doesn't do well at school. And sometimes that's the lost child. We lose that child. The system loses that child, and community loses that child. And we have way too many of those cases.
I think for starters, we have too many syndromes going around nowadays. I think they're in abundance. We have a pandemic of syndrome, multi-pandemic of
But it's
syndromes.
a fact.
No, I think that we overstate the problem
Okay.
instead of looking at the answers. A child who's an absent parent could maybe the parent has passed away, or the parent is overly busy, or maybe there's some other family domestic issues. And this is where the families come in. There's no other solution of this except this.
That's the problem, isn't
The
it?
families have to come in again as partners, not judgmental critics of that single mother or father.
But that's the problem, isn't it? In this day and age, we're all very immersed in our own little cocoons, our own little families. I want the best for my children. It doesn't matter what's happening in your home. I want my child to be the best, most competitive, and top of the class.
Perfect.
So whether you're my brother or not, and whatever's happening in your home, I won't interfere because it's not my business.
Perfect.
And that's the situation we're sitting with currently.
So the thing is, if you want your child to have the best of the grades and marks, whatever you want for them, and that's fine. But you should understand that if there are children in society who are broken inside, they are going to be the ones who are going to interact with my child 10 or 15 years from now. They are going to be selling to them or buying from them. They could be robbing them or killing them. You've turned these boys and little boys and girls into long-term sociopaths or, God forbid, psychopaths. And then it's your child who's in danger. So if I'm not going to pull up people who are below me, they're going to pull me down with them. So it's you look at it in a Islamic fashion or in a completely social, material way. If I'm not bringing people up in my family or in my society with no along with children, okay, don't give that much time. Giving your child 4 hours a day, give him an hour a week, man. But if you divide that time, the child, you don't fix the problem absentee parent, but you do help fill that vacuum and that gap in the child's personality to have him believe in humanity. And if you have people running around 20 years from now who have no faith in humanity, who have no empathy, and who have no care for the other man because nobody cared for them, do you want your child to live in that world?
No. Okay, I think the other two, three issues as well that you're very passionate about, and I do know you're going to be covering it in the next segment of the show, is around families, which we've touched on now, the importance of functional families. And if you have one family in the community that is dysfunctional, it impacts on 16 or 60 other lives that just starts breaking down. And I think that will be picked up a little later on in the other part of the show. Let's understand your worldview regarding what's playing out in Palestine and how that's going to impact the current cohort of children going through the school system.
I think that the Muslim leadership, the political leadership around the world, which we have not just in Pakistan, around the world, I think they have got to stop worshipping the West and call them out for their hypocrisy. Everything is downplayed in Palestine. It's absolutely openly state terrorism. It's open daylight robbery of the Palestinian person's rights. But instead of calling it that or even a war, we call it a conflict. You know, we play it down, the Arab-Israel conflict. Like, we have a conflict of ideas between you and me. That's just a conflict. It's hypocrisy. And I've seen interviews I saw the interview of the Israeli Prime Minister, and I was shocked, man, because he had the audacity to blame the Palestinians for their plight. And I just couldn't get over it. And the man interviewing him was a pretty sound fellow. He's a very famous psychologist. And this Prime Minister had the audacity, and I'm saying this again and again, to say that look what we have done for the Palestinians. We've done so much for them. We built industries for them. We got them jobs. And that is, I've heard of blaming the victim, but this is something which I don't think we have a word for yet. And everybody knows that, actually. I think that Muslim political leadership around the world should call out, for starters, call out this hypocrisy that they're doing. And let our children know that if nothing else, and I tell people this, that if you have never cried for Palestine, think if you have Iman even in your heart or not. I'm not saying there's no Iman in your heart. I won't be so judgmental about it. But think yourself. When people for the last 75 years or so, they have not slept a night of peace. If we have, the other day I was at a hotel and I was on the ground floor, but somebody told me on the fifth floor there was a wedding going on, and the people below them couldn't sleep all night of the merrymaking or whatever. And think that's one single night, you're in a comfortable bed, you're safe. Do you know, can our viewers, I like our viewers to imagine for a minute how it feels not to know if the next morsel of food is coming or not, and when is it coming? I travel, so I carry a big bag of medicines with me. Some of them are emergencies, and I was just thinking at the box in the morning today, and I was thinking that these medicines probably more than an Israeli and a Palestinian clinic might have right now, which I am going to just store them away for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I think and also this hypocrisy. Why I'm saying you call it out, because the other non-Muslims, I tell you, there are good people out there. We don't have to demonize the entire Christian, world or for the matter, even the Jewish world. Mm-hmm. What was the name of the girl who was run over by a bulldozer over a Palestinian village? So we have good people. We have good people in every community. And I see them, but I think we need to get connected to them as well. And of course, be connected to each other. We should have a Palestine a day at least in every school in the world, in every country in the world. And we should spend the resources we have, for example, talking to governments as well, and talking to governments around the world using our foreign office resources. Every country ought to do that. It's a human thing. It's not it's an Islamic thing or a Muslim thing. It's a human thing.
Um, I go back to what I'd said earlier on. We tend to lead very insular lives. It's all about me, myself, and I. And as Muslims, we know we need to have a much wider view about the entire community, and we need to open up and start touching lives in a very, very positive way so that we can be a very strong community and a very strong society. And I know that you have very strong views about women regarding that issue and the pivotal role women play in building the strong society. And without taking away from our next interview, can you just touch on the issue around women, their rights, and the role and the leadership role that they could be taking up?
Well, I want our audience and yourself to take a deep breath before I say what I'm going to say. I do not believe, really, that Islam gives people rights. I don't believe, really, in the way people tend to believe, women's rights and men's rights and parents' rights. I believe that Islam teaches us responsibilities. So the right of a wife is actually, because the word haqq in Arabic is also used for responsibility. The right of a wife was actually the responsibility of the husband. The right of a husband is actually the responsibility of the wife. The rights of children are responsibilities of the parents. The rights of parents are this is what I would like to change perspectives here and let people think in this manner of responsibilities. You see, when you talk about responsibilities, you ought to get busy in fulfilling them the best you can because you know it's a responsibility. Allah has placed that responsibility on me, and I am going to do my best to fulfill it because I am answerable to Allah on the day of resurrection. If you look at it with rights in the Western paradigm or the modern Western paradigm, I have rights, she has rights, he has rights, and that is always going to be conflict. There is, because you see, I'm going to sit back and wait for my rights to come to me, or I'm going to, or maybe I'm going to start fighting for them. Why should I do that? It's my responsibility, and that's your responsibility, and both responsibilities are aimed at pleasing Allah.
But I suppose that comes about because of the patriarchal society we live in. We need to change that mindset as well.
I think nothing wrong with the patriarchal society. It's been here for thousands of years. As long as the patriarch, he fulfills the responsibilities. You see, around the world, people complain about corrupt politicians, for example. So you don't do away with the government. You change the people, or you try to at least. You people sometimes, where I come from, people complain the doctors have become very commercial minded and they're always looking at ways to make money. And some go so far as saying that they've become merely salespersons for pharmaceutical giants. So what do? Do you shut down the medical colleges? Do you shut down the hospitals? You don't. You fix it.
How?
Right. And here it comes a very pertinent thing. The only segment of society that can truly do this is the woman. You see, I'll give you an example. I get a lot of complaints and calls from in my shows, in my lectures, and women are complaining about the mothers-in-law. And this mother-in-law, daughter problem is going on and on. It goes, how to fix it? And I said, I can't tell you only one solution. And he goes, yes. Because people always want a quick fix. They want maybe to give them a dua or something which we can give to them, and they can go and blow it on the mother-in-law's face, and she becomes an angel. I mean, in the sense of a dead person, maybe that's what they want. But you see, the solution is very simple. And I tell them, listen, your current mother-in-law can't be fixed. Not in my lifetime. So give up hope, you'll feel better. Okay. But the mother-in-law that you're going to be one day, she can be fixed.
Oh, okay.
Just if one generation would just change. But what happens in reality is the moment a woman becomes a mother-in-law, she replicates the behavior of her mother-in-law.
But I think
It's
we
like she's
as
getting back at the daughter-in-law for what she went through. Just give me one more second,
sure.
just a couple of more seconds. And this is how things change. Because the kind of husband I was decided long ago by my parents. Most of my work is learned behavior. Very few people can actually have the awareness to change those ways. So
But
I
we
think at the
can unlearn those behaviors.
we should. No, we can. No, no, no. We
We
have to
should.
unlearn them.
Okay.
Even if, it's very interesting, even if those behaviors are right, even then I have to unlearn and relearn them so I have conviction in my actions, not just a mere photocopy of my elders.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I see that the next segment is getting ready to go ahead. My final question to you, and I think this is a very universal threat that we are living under, and that is the issue around Islamophobia. You are a global citizen, you all around the world. What is it and why is it that the Western world view us with such fear, perhaps? What is it that we as Muslims are putting out there that Islamophobia is on the rise?
I think it's not that much as what we're putting out there, as much as what we are not putting out there. So we have a few Muslims who want to bring down buildings or burn down something, a church, and they have so much play and so much airtime and screen time that the majority of the Muslims don't get any screen time at all. I think that like this show we're having right now, this Salam Media, I think we should have a flood of these people coming out and telling people what they feel, what they think. Muslims are spending so much money around the world on philanthropy, and they should also market it, not because we want to market it in a way of getting dunya, but because we tell people what kind of work we are doing. And when we had the world's resources at our best, like the West has today, I think you'll find several times Europe, Ireland, I know for a fact, Britain used to get this financial aid packages from the Ottoman Empire. That's how blood crazed we were. I remember the potatoes used to. I've read somewhere that they used to go. So I think the Muslims need to put out their real face. The ordinary, Jamshed and the ordinary Aliya and the ordinary Ali and the Fatma of this world have to be out there, and they have to be uh, present for those to see.
And I think that's where we're going to leave it because I see the auditorium's filling up and you are going to be ready for your next interview. So thank you indeed, Sheikh. Wonderful listening to you chat. I wish I could stay here for the next part of the interview, but I need to go. So that's it from me this morning on News and Views. I do hope you've enjoyed the show. And undoubtedly for the rest of the week, Palestine is going to be on the spotlight. Please, brothers and sisters, let's put our hands together and let's make a dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And I do hope I know you're going to enjoy the second part of this show with a sister, Mariam Mia, and I see a few other sisters in the auditorium as well. And I know it's going to be a cracker of a show. Thank you indeed. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And assalamu alaikum from me, Julie Ali.